Hotel. This your brother Matthew Daniels, aka I'm Pooh, aka the Chosen Few, aka the real bookworm. I'm not a bookworm world, I'm the real bookworm. Make sure you get it right. And as always, may your name live on forever and may your memory never die. Hotel, cheers to that. Hey, look, family, real quick. I just came on today because I want to share a news article with you. Man, I want to say something. I remember a little while ago, everybody was going crazy and they were talking about how non-African populations had Neanderthal DNA. And they were talking about how involved in the outer Africa theory, they were saying that a group of early humans migrated out of Africa, evolved into Neanderthals, and then when the early hominids evolved into Homo sapiens on the African continent, they migrated out, encountered the Neanderthals, and began to interbreed and mate with them. And some stories came out saying that the Homo sapiens, the modern human populations that stayed on the continent of Africa, they didn't have the Neanderthal DNA. And individuals was kind of going crazy on the internet, and they were saying like, look, the Africans don't have Neanderthal DNA. But I want to tell you guys something, man. Since then, a lot more information has been coming out about evolution and about the genome of the human population. And what I'm starting to see is that, man, early humans were wild, family. Early humans were wild. It's just so crazy because it seems as if during this evolutionary process that led up to Homo sapiens being on the planet, it seems that different branches of the human families were created or evolved in different places. And then when Homo sapiens made it to those areas and encountered those cousins of the Homo sapien branch, they were having sex with them and they were having children with them, and elements of that has been found in our DNA. And so the big thing that I remember was that everybody was bragging and boasting about how the Africans who never left the continent did not have Neanderthal DNA. But what's crazy is they found out that Africans that never left the continent were also interbreeding with proto early hominids that were on the continent as well. So, but the first thing I want to do, I want to go to a story, a news article, before I go into what we see taking place in Africa. Okay, so look, check this out, man. Check this out. This is an article that came out in 2016, and it says Homo sapiens sex with extinct species was no was no one night stand. Homo sapiens sex with extinct species was no one night stand, meaning that according to the information, the DNA and genetic information that we have, is that this was happening over and over and over. Modern humans, Homo sapiens, were interbreeding with now extinct species, and not just one. It seems like they were interbreeding with every now extinct species that they came across. Let's read this because I don't want to be here too long. It says, our species, Homo sapiens, has a more adventurous sexual history than previously realized. And all that bed hopping long ago, I'm sorry, all that bed hopping long ago has left an indelible mark on the human genome. Scientists said on Friday an analysis of genetic information on about 1,500 people from locations around the world indicated at least 4 interbreeding episodes tens of thousands of years ago. 3 with our close cousins, the Neanderthals, and 1 with the mysterious extinct human species known as Denisovans. So we have actual physical, genetic, and DNA evidence of Homo sapiens interbreeding with Neanderthals, and they've actually found the remains of three individuals who were a mix between Neanderthals and Homo sapiens sapiens. So they've actually found some of these mixed children, right? Not only do they have the DNA and the genetic studies that they find in people today, they've actually found remains of some of these mixed children. And so they also say that they found one with the mysterious extinct human species known as Denisovans. So not only did Homo sapiens sapiens interbreed with Neanderthals, they also interbred with another extinct species called Denisovans. The article goes on to say people living on the remote equatorial island of Melanesia represented the only population found to possess an appreciable level of Denisovan genetic ancestry. These Melanesians, like most human populations, also had Neanderthal genetic ancestry. The researchers found some of the genes inherited from these extinct species were beneficial for our species. Many are involved in the immune system and likely helped protect against pathogens, and some play important roles in skin and hair biology, said University of Washington evolutionary geneticist Joshua Aki, who helped lead the study published in the Journal of Science. The researchers analyzed DNA sequences from 35 people living on northern island Melanesia off the coast of New Guinea. These Melanesians were found to have about 2% Neanderthal ancestry plus an additional genetic contribution of roughly 2 to 4% from Denisovans. So what they're saying is that in this people group, these Melanesian people group that they tested of about 35 different people, these people had genetic information of Homo sapiens sapiens, obviously, but they also had genetic information from Neanderthals, and they had genetic information from Denisovans, meaning that at some point, all of these three had to be mixing and matching. You understand what I'm saying? They had to be mixing and matching, which is a crazy idea for me to imagine, because when you talk about evolution, we're talking about Homo sapiens sapiens evolving from a earlier hominids. This is how they teach it. They teach that it went from, I don't know, like Australopithecus to Homo habilis, then to Homo heidelbergensis or Homo erectus, Homo neanderthal, Homo sapiens sapien. They give you the lineage from the Australopithecus all the way up to the Homo sapiens sapien. But what is looking like is, as these groups evolved into the Homo sapiens sapien, like between the Australopithecus and the Homo sapien, you have something known as the Homo heidelbergensis. Right now, they're telling us that the Homo heidelbergensis in Africa eventually evolved into the Homo sapiens sapien. But this Homo heidelbergensis, some of them migrated out of Africa while some of them stayed in Africa to become the Homo sapiens sapiens. Now, what they're telling us is that the Homo heidelbergensis, the group that left Africa and went into Europe, instead of them evolving into Homo sapiens sapien, they evolved into the Neanderthal. And so when the Homo heidelbergensis in Africa finished evolving into Homo sapiens sapien, the Homo sapiens sapien went out and met the Neanderthal, who was the descendant from the Homo heidelbergensis, and then they intermingled and mated and had mixed children as well. Okay, and they also say that one of these proto-humans, these early hominids, migrated to where the Denisovans were at in like the area of Siberia, and they evolved. Instead of evolving into Neanderthal, instead of evolving into Homo sapien, they evolved into Denisovan. So it's evidence that possibly these Denisovans and these Neanderthals, they came across each other and they interbred. And also the Homo sapien, not only did they interact and interbreed with Neanderthal, but when they came across the Denisovan, they interbred with the Denisovan too. So you have individuals who are hominids in the line from Australopithecus to Homo sapiens sapien, who migrated to various parts on the planet, and then they evolved into something different than the Homo sapiens sapien, but they were still close enough genetically to when the Homo sapiens sapien encountered these cousins in the human families, they had sex with them as well and had children. Okay, think about that. So it goes on to say the non-African population studied had roughly 1.5 to 4% Neanderthal genetic ancestry, Aki said. African populations do not have either Neanderthal or Denisovan ancestry because those two species were never on that continent. Now, I want you to realize that. That is a reference to what I'm telling you about when I saw the internet explode with the concept of that non-Africans have Neanderthal DNA, but the Africans that never left the continent do not, because they're saying that the Neanderthals and the Denisovans, they evolved outside of Africa from hominids that left Africa. And so when the Homo sapiens sapiens evolved in Africa, some of them never left. The ones that left interacted with these populations of Neanderthals and Denisovans, and they mixed with them so that they would have aspects of their DNA and their genetic material in them, while the Homo sapiens sapiens, who remained in Africa until this day and never left, they do not have the Neanderthal and the Denisovan ancestry. So it was a big thing. It was a big thing about that. Everyone wanted to say that, oh, Africans don't have Neanderthal DNA. It's only the populations that left out of Africa that have this Neanderthal and Denisovan DNA. But side note, there are recent stories that are coming out now that Africans that did not leave the continent, they do in fact have some Neanderthal DNA, but it looks like it's from back migration, as in Homo sapiens sapiens left Africa, got Neanderthal and Denisovan DNA into their DNA. These population groups eventually back migrated into Africa, mixed with the Homo sapiens sapiens there, and did introduce some of that genetic material into the DNA. But I'm going to show you in a minute that even with that, the African cannot brag and boast about non-Africans mixing with hominid species, because they did it too, and it's apparent now from the genetic and DNA research. Let's just read a little bit more of this article before we move on. Denisovans discovered in the past decade are known only from a pinky finger bone and two teeth from a northern Siberian cave. The robust, large-browed Neanderthals prospered across Europe and Asia from about 350,000 years ago until disappearing shortly after 40,000 years ago. Less is known about the Denisovans. The fact that the only known Denisovan remains come from northern Siberia, but that their genetic contribution is seen in people living far away in Melanesia, suggests Denisovans had a broad geographic range extending from Asia, Aki said. Binghamton University molecular anthropologist D. Andrew Merriweather said the researchers also detected a contribution to people's genome from a fourth unknown source. So what they're talking about, this fourth unknown source, is there's genetic information from the Homo sapiens sapiens, genetic information from the Neanderthals, and genetic information from the Denisovans, but there also seems to be, right, possible genetic information from a yet unknown, unnamed source. So there is possibly another yet to be discovered hominid that evolved from something, a hominid that left Africa before that hominid became Homo sapiens sapien in Africa. They evolved into something different from the Neanderthal and from the Denisovan, but they were still close enough that they could have sex and mix with these Neanderthals, Denisovans, and Homo sapiens sapiens, and they did in fact mix, or it's possible that they did in fact mix. He just said that the research also detects something like that in the genome. I'm assuming that they would need more information to be 100% sure. So it goes on to say, so this paints a picture of probably at least four species of hominids, our species and extinct human species, alive at the same time and interbreeding at times over the last 100,000 years. Definitely not something most people supposed before 10 years ago, Meriwether said. So when you're talking about the evolution of humans, don't think that that we have an ancient hominid ancestor that evolved into Homo sapiens sapiens and now we're Homo sapiens sapiens on the planet. No, what it's looking like is as that evolutionary process took place at different points within that evolutionary process. Like, let's say if you go from, I don't know, let's say you have Australopithecus. Let's say you have Homo habilis. Let's say you have Homo heidelbergensis. Let's say you have Homo erectus. Let's say you have Homo ergaster. Let's say you have Homo neanderthal. And let's say you have Homo sapiens sapien, and let's say you have Denisovan. What they're saying now is that at each of those steps that led up to us evolving into Homo sapiens sapien, the Homo erectus, the Homo ergaster, the Homo habilis, the Homo heidelbergensis, those portions of those populations migrated to certain areas and they continued on their own unique evolutionary path. And instead of them evolving into Homo sapiens, like the group that stayed in Africa, they evolved into something else. But that quote unquote something else was still close enough to the eventual Homo sapiens sapien that they could interbreed and have children. So you had different groups of humans living in different parts of the world at the same time. And they were different, but close enough for them to interact and have children. And so those children would be a mix between a Homo sapien and a Neanderthal. Those children would be a mix between a Homo sapien and a Denisovan. Those children would be a mix between a Homo sapien and this fourth unnamed source that's identified in the article. So there is a lot of different people groups out there, and they are mixing and matching DNA and genetics, and they're having babies with one another. Crazy. But what I want to show you guys is recently, about a year ago, this came out, and this stood out to me. This was very, 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 very shocking. And now, West Africans, they can't boast and say that, oh man, look, y'all was out there interbreeding with Neanderthal. You were interbreeding with Denisovan. You were interbreeding with a unnamed source. Guess what? The Africans that stayed in Africa were also interbreeding with these hominids, certain hominids that were other branches on the family tree. Look at the title. Ghost DNA in West Africans complicates story of human origins. These hominids and these Homo sapiens, they were doing a whole lot of mixing and matching, family. The article says rather, about 50,000 years ago, ancient humans in what is now West Africa apparently procreated with another group of ancient humans that scientists did not know existed. Now, this is interesting to me because I am a direct descendant of West Africans. Okay, I have DNA that links me to the Bantu peoples, that links me to the Congo, and some that links me to Nigeria, Sierra Leone, places like that. So when they start talking about West Africans, Homo sapiens sapiens in West Africa mixing and matching with hominids, just like the Homo sapiens that mixed and matched with Neanderthals, Denisovans, and a fourth unknown species outside of Africa, we see that these Homo sapiens in West Africa were mating and mixing with another hominid. Now, for them to be able to do that, this hominid has to be a descendant of one of the precursors to the Homo sapien. It has to be either the Homo erectus, the Homo ergaster, the Homo habilis, the Homo heidelbergensis. One of these people groups had to have had a population that went into the area of West Africa and continued on their own evolutionary path. And when the Homo sapiens finally made it to when the Homo sapiens finally evolved, and then they migrated into West Africa. They ran into these hominids, just like the Homo sapiens leaving Africa ran into Neanderthal. And guess what they did? They slept with them and had babies. About 50,000 years ago, ancient humans in what is now West Africa apparently procreated with another group of ancient humans that scientists didn't know existed. There aren't any bones or ancient DNA to prove it, but researchers say the evidence is in the genes of modern West Africans. They analyzed genetic material from hundreds of people from Nigeria and Sierra Leone and found signals of what they call ghost DNA from an unknown ancestor. Our own species, Homo sapiens, lived alongside other groups that split off from the same genetic family tree at different times. That's what I've been saying. And there's plenty of evidence from other parts of the world that early humans had sex with other hominids like Neanderthals. That's why Neanderthal genes are present in humans today and people of European and Asian descent. Homo sapiens also mated with another group, the Denisovans, and those genes are found in people from Oceania. The findings on ghost DNA published in the journal Science Advances further complicate the picture of how Homo sapiens or modern humans evolved away from other human relatives. It's almost certainly the case that the story is incredibly complex and complicated, and we have kind of these initial hints about the complexity, says Shriram Sankararam, computational biologist at UCLA. The scientists analyzed the genomes of 405 West Africans. Sankara says they used a statistical model to flag parts of the DNA. The technique goes along a person's genome and pulls out chunks of DNA which we think are likely to have come from a population that is not modern humans. The unusual DNA found in West Africa isn't associated with either Neanderthals or Denisovans. This person and his study co-author Arun Vasula think it comes from a yet to be discovered group. So obviously there's more information that needs to come out about this, but based on the genetic findings, this is the initial conclusion. We don't have a clear identity for this archaic group, so and so says. That's why we use the term ghost. It doesn't seem to be particularly closely related to the groups from which we have genome sequences from. So it seems to be a new group yet to be identified. The scientists think the interbreeding happened about 50,000 years ago, roughly the same time that Neanderthals were breeding with modern humans elsewhere in the world. It's not clear whether there was a single interbreeding event, though, or whether it happened over an extended period of time. The unknown group appears to have split off from the ancestors of modern humans a little while before Neanderthals split off from our ancestors, he said. Sharon Browning, a biostatistics professor at the University of Washington who has studied the mixing of Denisovans and humans, says the scenario that they are discovering here is one that seems realistic. Browning notes that the ghost DNA appears frequently in the genetic material. That tells us that these archaic populations may have had some DNA that did some useful stuff that's proved to be useful to the modern population, she says. But at the moment, Shikararaman says it's not possible to know what, if any, role these genetic materials have for modern humans who carry them. Are they just randomly floating in our genomes? Do they have any kind of adaptive benefits? Do they have deleterious consequences? He added, those are all questions which would be fantastic to start thinking about. And I'm not gonna read the rest of that. All I'm gonna say is what it appears and how they're saying that the story of human evolution is becoming more complex as they get more information, because some people have it in their head that modern Homo sapiens began at a particular point. and they continued on a specific evolutionary path that made us Homo sapiens sapiens. And now, voila, everybody on the planet is a Homo sapiens sapien. But what it is looking like and what has been proven and what the evidence, the DNA, the genetic genome sequencing, what it has shown is that while Homo sapiens sapiens were evolving from an earlier hominid species, at each stop on that evolutionary path, populations within that specific group, as in if you went from Australopithecus to Homo habilis, certain population groups of Homo habilis migrated to certain areas. Now, those areas may have been in Africa as well. And once they migrated to another area in Africa and left the host population group, the host original population group evolved into something else that eventually evolved into Homo sapiens. But since these populations of Homo habilis were separated, the separated group of Homo habilis evolved into something different. And that something different eventually came into contact with the Homo sapien, and they mixed as well. And then this Homo habilis evolved into Homo heidelbergensis. Small population groups of Homo heidelbergensis migrated to other areas and continued on their own evolutionary path. You have Homo erectus. Certain populations of Homo erectus migrated to other areas and continued on their own evolutionary path. You have Homo ergaster. Certain populations of Homo ergaster migrated to other areas and continued on their own evolutionary path. So what is looking like is there is a potential for, 50,000 to 300,000 years ago. There is a lot of evidence that you had different types of humans who had evolved on their own evolutionary path in different parts of the planet, all living at the same time. And then in Africa, the Homo sapiens sapien evolved from their own evolutionary path. And so you had Homo sapiens sapien, you had this unknown population in West Africa, you had the Neanderthals in Europe, you had the Denisovans in the area of Siberia, in the area of Asia. Then you had another unknown species in that area. It's a possibility that in South Africa they're gonna find another early human species, early hominid species that evolved on their own evolutionary branch. And at one time in history on the planet, there were different types of humans on different parts of the planet. And when Homo sapiens sapien evolved, they migrated to different areas, interacted with these hominids. They were human too, obviously. If they think about it, if they can have children with them, family, if they can have children with them, they are close enough to, they all were humans. They all were humans. They were the same but different. They were all humans. And they interacted with them, interbreeded with them, and they had children. So the Homo sapiens sapien today has a lot of stuff that still needs to be uncovered inside of their DNA. So I want to thank you guys for tuning in to this. I'm going to get out of here. We've been on for about 30 minutes. So from this point on, no people group can brag and boast and point fingers at another people group because their ancestors interbred with other hominid species because it looks like all hominids interbreeded with whatever hominid species they encountered when they went to a particular part on the planet. And I want to see some more studies or some more research or some more articles about what the planet looked like with all of these different populations living on it. It's almost as if you have all these different types of humans living at one time. That blows my mind. That blows my mind. What were their different cultures? You know, what were their different? I don't know if they probably all didn't have language, but how did they hunt? Did they all have clothes? What did they do? How did they live? How did they interact with the Homo sapiens when they interacted with them? It seems like the story of humanity has gotten a lot more complex. Thank you guys for watching. Like, share, subscribe to the channel. And as you see going across the bottom of the screen, I am an author. You can visit dandyandbigherm.com and you can order my best-selling urban fiction novel, Suicide Note, or any one of the other novels that I've written. This your brother, Matthew Daniels, a.k.a. I'm Pooh, a.k.a. The Chosen Few, a.k.a. The Real Bookworm. I'm not a bookworm world. I'm the real bookworm. Make sure you get it right. And as always, may your name live on forever and may your memory never die. Hotel. Cheers to that. I'm out, family.